Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the first decan of Capricorn. We're going to be breaking down all the astrology leading up to the full moon. We have a full moon coming up on Monday. New moon, full moon on Monday, I guess you could say, if you're a Duran Duran fan. We're going to talk about the astrology for the next few weeks after the full moon, the rest of the lunar cycle, and get you to the new moon in Cancer. And we're just going to talk about mythology, tarot, astrology, fixed stars. We're going to talk about the fixed stars today and just spend some time together. So I hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon as I'm recording this on, what's the date today? The 26th of June. And yeah, if you're here in the chat, let me know and tell me where you're stopping in from. A couple announcements before we roll on out. Welcome, friends. We have some ground to cover, but before we do, go visit me over on spencermichaud.com. This is the place where you can find me and all of my services. I am a professional astrologer, diviner, tarot card reader, fixed star person, decan enthusiast. And if you'd like to know more about your natal chart or what the stars or what the divine or the universe has in store for you, go find me over at spencermichaud.com. All sorts of different things where you can find out about your future, your present, contextualize your present, explore your past, and try to understand the stories that have been repeating within your life. All of those things are available at spencermichaud.com. Click on the book now button. That's a mouthful. Click on the book now button and let's work together. You can also visit the store where I have a number of webinars, including the Decan series that is available for purchase, pre-recorded webinars, over 4 hours each. So that's over, oh my gosh, what is 4 times 12? Over 30, 48 hours, over 48 hours really of Decanic material. I hope I'm doing my math right there. And you can see all of these things broken down in great detail, including the myths and stories behind all of them, the fixed stars, the tarot card associations, the Decanic dignity with these signs. It's just a huge amalgamation of a lot of different sources. So check those out. You can also find a beautiful collaboration I did with my partner Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, where we did a Dignity and Devotion planetary series where we talked about the 7 traditional planets and how to craft a ritual practice around those, how to do elections if you're into astrological magic, how to remediate a chart if you have some challenging things that you're going through with transits or with some challenging planets in your own chart. How do we utilize the planets in ways that can maybe give us a little bit of a boost? Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, you can find Tanya over on Etsy. She has a number of ritually elected planetary magic conjure combination formulas that are really beautifully produced with organic oils and ritually crafted and harvested herbs. Here you can see this new offering, King Crab with exalted Jupiter in Cancer, which is one of the best positions for any planet, but for the greater benefic in particular. This is a great one for holding on to abundance, for expanding what you're doing in the world, but also to be able to hold on to the good things in life, which are sometimes not that easy to do. Sometimes we've got things in life that are fleeting and we want to hold on to them a little bit longer. King Crab is great for that. She also has Dragon's Blood, which is an exalted Mars and Capricorn formula, which is great for protection. There is the Lion's Light, Sun in Leo, if you're trying to shine your light out there. Really important when we're going to be talking about Jupiter moving into Leo. Venus is in Leo right now. We have an eclipse in Leo. We have the South Node moving into Leo. So maybe you might need some assistance with the Leo part of your chart as well. And then finally, right now, Saturn's in a challenging position with Saturn and Aries being in its fall. Scientific Method is a ritually crafted conjure oil that has Saturn in Aquarius, its home domicile. So if you're having difficulty with commitment, with patience, with being able to bind yourself to the type of hard work that's necessary to get from point A to point B and complete things, Scientific Method, great way to do that and to be able to think from a 30,000 foot perspective rather than just what we're trying to do in the moment or like what we're thinking of doing tomorrow. This is helping us think long range, and that long range thinking can really point us in the right direction. So check her out, Third Coast Mojo. Venus stuff and Mercury stuff there as well. Mercury and Virgo conjure oil. Great stuff for focus and concentration. Check Tanya out on Etsy today. If you want to know when we are going live and when we are releasing new products through Third Coast Mojo, you can subscribe to the newsletter. There is a link to do so in this podcast, wherever you are consuming this content today. I would love to have you on the email list. Send that out about once a week. I also send you a notification when we're going live here on YouTube. So if you aren't subscribed on YouTube, please do so. I'm also on Apple Podcasts. So if you listen in that format, make sure to give a 5-star review over there. And we're on Spotify as well. So you can listen in the audio version of this as well. But subscribe to the newsletter. If you want to support the work I'm doing today, you can buy a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and support the channel that way. I really appreciate all of you who are able to make a contribution, and it really does help me and my partner do this work and continue to have the time and resources to do this work, to do the research, to purchase the books, to be able to just live our lives so that we can continue to do this work rather than having to do something else necessarily. But every little bit helps, and thank you for your contributions today and in the past and into the future. Okay. Friends, let's talk about full moon in Capricorn. We are going to be experiencing this waxing moon into fullness this weekend. The moon becomes full at 8 degrees of Capricorn on the 29th of June. Kind of a pivotal point, I guess you could say, in the astrology of the summer. We just had our summer solstice, so we had the sun at its highest point. The sun is sort of switching directions, I guess, as we speak. Like the days are the longest they will ever be, and now the night is starting to increase very incrementally, but nonetheless. And every season, my partner Tanya and I have a large discussion about what do we want to do in this season? What do we want to do in this quarter, I guess you could say, of the year? And this is a great full moon for having those types of discussions where you're saying, hey, what have we achieved so far? What do we want to achieve into the next season or the rest of the year? Where's the best place to build? What are the materials that we have to work with? What do we lack? How do we gain the cooperation and communication to work with others while we're trying to build, which is a feature of the sun in Cancer one. We'll talk about that today too. How do we create mutually beneficial relationships? We may be dealing with resources that aren't as fertile as we would hope. We might be experiencing some lacks or some roadblocks. We might be forced into doing some things sooner than we would like with Saturn in Aries and saying, hey, it's really time for you to make a new start. You've got to really, take the foot off the brake and hit the gas. But this is a good time to take stock. It's a good time to weigh the pros and cons of the types of places that you want to grow into the future. Where do you want to descend, like they say in 36 Faces in Austin Coppock's book, into matter? And what are the laws of that land? What are the laws of the new space that you want to inhabit? And understanding those can lead you in a positive direction. This full moon is going to be conjunct the fixed star Phasces. Phasces is a fixed star in the eye of the Archer of Sagittarius. We have fixed stars that overlap into different tropical signs because of a concept called precession in the zodiac, where the constellations are not necessarily lining up with the tropical zodiac because of the wobble and tilt of the Earth over many decades and hundreds and thousands of years. So right now, the stars of Sagittarius somewhat overlap with the tropical sign of Capricorn. So Phasces is the eye of the Archer. There's intensity in that space. There is vision. There is a focus, an intensity of focus where we're maybe potentially trying to pursue our goals, but with a ruthless passion. We might need to be careful at this full moon of pursuing something so intensely that we lose track of the sensitivity needed in our relationships. That's where the tension comes in, I think, in this type of full moon. Is the sun is shining a spotlight on our partnerships, the tender partnerships that we have with one another. This week, my partner and I decided to take a little bit of like a nature break, and we went out to our local botanical gardens, the Mathi Botanical Gardens in Ann Arbor, part of the U of M Botanical Garden system. And it was really beautiful. It was just a nice day with the two of us looking at native plants, wildflowers. Like we saw monarch caterpillars and a gray catbird and some snails. And it was just really nice. And it was very quiet. It was very peaceful. It was just a nice time together. And that's what the sun is trying to highlight. What are the things that we love? What are we passionate about? How do we work with others to achieve that? When we get to this full moon, we start to see, well, okay, we know we have to work with others, but where do we have to make some tough decisions? Where do we have to get a little bit less sensitive about what we're doing and say, you know what, we can't necessarily take every single feeling into account. We want to be able to, let me think about how to verbalize that. We want to acknowledge and express our feelings, and we don't want to repress them. We don't want to stuff them down, but also we don't want to be completely swept about by them, that we can't do the practical things that we need to do. A full moon in Capricorn says, what do we do with those feelings? How do we make them into something tangible? We know what we're getting an idea of what we love and what we're passionate about. Now, where do we want to ground that energy, ground those emotions, so that it's not just a passing fancy, so that we can make something real of it? So with this fixed star full moon conjunct Facies, we might have an intensity of focus towards what we love. A couple other features of the full moon, just from an overview perspective. Mercury is going to station retrograde the hours before the full moon. So we might have something we need to review. We might need to review how we are spending our abundance, whether that abundance is money, whether that abundance is time, whether that abundance is our wisdom or our relationships. All of these are ways that we can contextualize being affluent. We can also think about the scarcity in those areas. Maybe we have a lot of money, but we don't have a lot of friends, or we don't have a lot of time, or we don't have a lot of peace. Maybe we have a lot of those things, but we don't have a lot of physical resources. So this will be a time to ask the questions. Mercury is a planet that loves to ask questions and loves to be able to contextualize what the next steps might be, to organize our thoughts, to be able to have and use our sacred doubt to answer questions, not just to ask them, but to answer them as well, right? So we might be asking questions about where we are abundant, where we are scarce, and reviewing that before we start moving forward into the summer season and what we want to build and manifest. Because oftentimes we have great dreams and big visions. Sometimes some would even accuse some of us with hubristic visions. And oftentimes the reality of our situation, of our resources, doesn't always match up with what we want to do and achieve. Doesn't mean that it can't. It means that we have to work with time. Means that we have to work with patience. Means that we have to work with a systematic unfolding, seasonal awareness. All of those things can help us to achieve the things that we dream of. But Mercury retrograde is going to help us to ask those questions that need to be asked. Both Mercury retrograde and Jupiter in the last degrees, or the last degree, the anaretic degree of Cancer, is going to be co-present with the sun. So this is the last gasp of Jupiter at its maximum energy of abundance, of exaltation, as an honored guest in the sign of the moon. It then moves into Leo, and the energy really shifts. This is a weekend where we're like taking a deep breath in, and the energy is shifting. Jupiter is going to be moving into Leo. Mars is going to be moving out of its exile, okay, in Taurus and into Gemini, into Mercury's sign that's going to be hosting from that retrograded condition, and then applying to a conjunction with Uranus. So we'll talk about that today too. The moon is also going to be squared Saturn and Neptune. So when we are trying to decide what types of things we want to build, what types of resources we want to utilize in search of our peace and our dreams and pursuing the things that we love, we may have a little bit of a distorted vision of that with the square with Neptune in Aries. We might be feeling like we want what we want, and cooperation be damned, right? With Neptune and Aries. We may also be having a little bit of a distorted viewpoint as to how long some of these things might take. I think that when Saturn is in Aries, we feel pressure to do it now. This is why Saturn is mismatched in Aries, because Saturn says one step at a time, baby steps, little tiny steps over time. And when Saturn's in Aries, it says, I feel like I have to do everything right now. I feel bound to making this new start, this aggressive yang force. And the moon making the square to that might be saying, hey, you have to reconcile these two energies of feeling pressure to do it all now, and the very real need to plan things out step by step so that you can sustain the energy over time. This is a real difficulty that I think a lot of people are having right now. Because of the changing nature of the world, because of the changing nature of our lives, we may feel forced into doing something new, into launching something. This decan associated with the moon is related to change, changing your circumstances, and hopefully for the better. Okay, hopefully for the better. That's one of the things that we'll have to talk about today is if we're going to be dealing with changes, how do we guide them in the right direction? Mayor's here. What's up, Mayor? Nice to see you. Says hi from Maine. Paintings by Mayor. Working on some artwork, I hope, in the studio while listening. Got a beautiful, I think, oh, I remember what that is. I thought it was a snowy owl at first, but this is a sort of a, not necessarily an albino, but a variant, a mutation of a red-tailed hawk, it seems, like a white variant mutated red-tailed hawk, which is very cool. You have to remind me of the name for that again. The moon will also be out of bounds during this full moon. So we might be feeling a little bit extra emotional. We might be feeling a lot of memories. We might be feeling a little bit scattered. Our bodies might be pushed to the limit, potentially. The moon is already sort of challenged in Capricorn. It's in its exile. So we've got an exiled moon and a fallen Saturn as a part of this. We do have an exalted Jupiter still, trying to smooth things out, okay? But we're going to lose some of that, I guess, exalted energy of Jupiter in the day after. So this is a good time to plan what to do with our excesses, to try to figure out the balance between needing to do something now and having patience, but also starting to figure out how to become a little bit more visible or become more comfortable with visibility. We'll talk about that with Jupiter moving into Leo, but with the moon out of bounds, a little bit of extra feelings, a little bit of maybe pushing us beyond our normal lunar bodily emotional limits. Mars is going to be applying to Uranus and be at the bending of the nodes shortly after this lunation. And this is a real big shift for Mars during the full moon. So this is a place where Mars was debilitated in Taurus, where we might have just been really having a lot of challenges that came up that weren't necessarily our fault. I think that the third decan of Taurus speaks towards natural disasters. We've seen a lot of earthquakes lately. We've seen a lot of like things where nature just did some things and we had to pick up the pieces afterwards. We also maybe just experiencing some things that are out of our control. This is really part of the energy of Taurus 3, you know, and with Mars creating some hardships, but not necessarily through a fault of our own, right? The other thing with Mars and Taurus is it can sever and separate our natural ability to solve problems in the third decan of Taurus and be consistent in our routines. I would say that my personal experience for Mars and Taurus over the course of the last month or so is my sleep schedule has gotten just annihilated. I used to be someone who went to bed around 10 or 10:30 and woke up around 6:30 or 7, and my sleep schedule has shifted way late, and it's very erratic and inconsistent, and it's been a real challenge. I'm not sure what kind of energy level I'm going to wake up with the next day. And I hope that Mars moving into Gemini, or at least out of Taurus, will help us avoid that pitfall in the future. Mars moving into Gemini may excite our nervous system. It might lead to a lot of new explorations or the desire to explore new avenues. It might lead to a lot of new distractions as well, especially with its conjunction to Uranus. So it's shifting from a little bit of discomfort with the body. Okay, like and during Mars and Taurus also had a little bit of digestive upset. I don't know what's going on. It's kind of mysterious. I'm going to blame it on Mars. I don't know. Maybe it's just a synchronicity between Mars and something that I'm eating or something that I'm doing. Maybe the lack of sleep is part of that. But it shifts from a disruption within the body or within the gut, maybe even, to maybe a disruption within the nervous system or the mind or with our thoughts, where we might be just having a lot of like maybe repetitive thought patterns or a lot of scattered thinking. And the conjunction with Uranus, it could be a really interesting idea that comes that shakes us out of our rut that we were in with Mars and Taurus that could potentially be something positive. So we want to leave the door open for positivity around that as well. Okay, so those are sort of the big picture thoughts around the lunation. Let's see. Mare says a leucistic red tail. Right, that's the word. Leucistic red tail is a spectacular rare morph of North America's most common raptor. Caused by a genetic mutation affecting melanin production, it features striking white or patchy plumage. Ooh, I love it. Well, that is a beautiful leucistic red-tailed hawk, Mare. And go find Mare, paintings by Mare, if you want beautiful nature paintings. Ani is here. What's up, Ani? Says, hello, I need updates. Be right back. Okay. Feeling disruption in my nervous system and technology. Well, you're anticipating Mars moving into Gemini already, Ani. So let's all take a deep breath. We'll get some water and we'll try to prepare ourselves for that. I think that there are ways to prepare ourselves for it. Ani says Mars Uranus for the win, plus the moon is at 29 Scorpio, applying to Mars opposition right now. Yeah, that could be leading to some of those feelings potentially as well. But we'll try to prepare all of you the best that we can for the astrology for the few weeks ahead and see if we can do something productive with it or just prepare ourselves to be able to endure whatever comes our way. I mean, I think this is the duality of astrology. It can help us to take actions and make better decisions. It can also just help us to figure out how to mitigate some of the challenging things that we're going through in life, even if that means relaxation, even if it means meditation, even if it means tolerance and acceptance of what's going on in our life as well. All of those things can be spoken towards with a study of divinatory arts. I know for me, like I had a really productive day yesterday, Thursday, like getting all my promotion done, getting prepared for this broadcast, for this live stream. And I was able to do so and sit and do the digital computer work because the day before I was feeling really burnt out. And I was like, I really need some outdoor time. I need some nature. I need to refill the physical tank. And we spent the afternoon at one of the most beautiful spaces in our area. And it wasn't a huge, long hike. We were just enjoying every little square foot. You know, I think that one of the things that we were really enjoying was just seeing the beautiful native pollinator plants that we have in our own yard, that many of which we purchased at the plant sale from this organization, and seeing them in the conditions that they were meant for, with like full sun or like rocky or sandy soil for some of it, or some things that were meant to be planted in a swampy area, and seeing them at their full potential was really inspiring. And it gave us, I think, a lot of ideas of what we want to do moving forward to be good stewards of the land that we inhabit. And it really filled up the tank so that I wasn't feeling antsy at the computer. I wasn't feeling like, God, I wish I was outside. I wish I was outside. I had gotten that part of myself fulfilled. And I think that one of the things that I was hoping to aspire to is like, how do we make this a weekly endeavor where we just have 1 week where we shut the brain down, we go off to a beautiful space, we call it our exotic walk. We take walks every day around the neighborhood, but sometimes when we take the same path, it can be just like we're on autopilot, right? And we're just traversing the same path that we always do. When we go on exotic walks, we're stimulating the mind and stimulating the brain to make new connections. And I think that can be really liberating, especially when Mars is coming into Gemini. That can help us to ground and to relax. Ani says, thanks for reminding me to water my plants. Therapeutic and necessary. It's desert dry and hot at the moment. Yeah. Yes. Make sure you water everything if you're in a place that is not getting enough rain right now. I planted a lot of new things recently that I've had to go out and water a lot recently, but it's relaxing. It's peaceful, and it's something that is a great meditation, I think. Devin Malone is here. Says, man, this full moon is full as the last sphere of delivering light to the world. Yeah, it is. We are building to something very interesting, aren't we? Lots going on in the collective right now, too. And again, hopefully we can navigate it gracefully. Mare says, I have Mars, Taurus, natal. Most transits that aspect my chart here usually disrupts my digestion. There you go. So this is one of the things that's cool about co-creating these broadcasts. When we talk about our personal experiences with these placements, we can start to share and make connections when we see these indicators in the chart and how it might be affecting us personally via transit or via having that particular chart in our natal charts as well. I'm a Mars Virgo, so Mars may naturally be disrupting digestion. I think Mars in any Earth sign can sometimes lead to a little bit of a challenging relationship with physicality. It can lead to like a lot of good willpower towards creating physical things, but sometimes our relationships with our own bodies can be a little bit touch and go, right? So it's interesting to get another confirmation of that. Mare says, I struggle with Gemini energy, opposite my ascendant. Yeah, it is a unique energy. I would say that the Gemini energy, my favorite metaphor for it, if we're thinking about it in nature terms, is the bee that is visiting many different flowers, many different pollination spots, and gathering little bits to bring it back to the hive to create something with it. And there's just a lot of little touch and go moments with Gemini. And that can be very difficult if that's something that we're not comfortable with. I know a lot of us that are introverted, maybe if you've got some 12th house placements or you've got a lot of yin energy in your chart, a lot of water and earth in your chart, it might be a little bit of a more difficult thing to navigate. Personally, as a Venus and Gemini native, there are times when I really like talking. There are times when I really like socializing. But as a 12th house sun and Mercury in Cancer, there are other times where I feel super drained and I want to just retreat back into my own personal space and into my own headspace. One of the things that I did that I'm feeling really good about right now, and I am feeling like I did future Spencer a favor, is I just ordered some headphones, some little earbuds. They're called Loop 2s, and they're adjustable with different decibel levels. And they lower the decibel level of all of the extra sounds around you. But they still allow you to hear conversations and things like that. They're really good if you have ADHD or if you're on the autism spectrum or something like that. There's been a lot of people that have said, hey, these are really life-changing. And I feel good about that because I feel like with Mars moving into Gemini, it could increase the noise. It could increase the distractions. So little actions like that to like reduce the volume, I think can lead us to having like a little bit better nervous system energy, right? If you're into using astrological magic, my partner has a really nice one that I like to wear a lot. Venus and Libra energy with a spica election. It's called Serene Queen. It's one that I feel like really just calms my nervous system down if I'm feeling agitated. So that's a really good one if you want to use something like that as well. Ani says, oh my God, full moon. Also, no wonder I'm howling at the wind. It's windy today. So much agitation. Yes, there's a lot going on, friend. Moon in Scorpio will also turn your guts. Applying to Mars is insomnia and a gut problem for many of us who are predisposed to all the uncomfortable feels. Yes. A lot of factors that can lead to disruptions with our bodies. My father, Ani, has Mars in Taurus opposite the moon in Scorpio. So he has a double whammy. And he has always had digestive issues. He also has Jupiter in Virgo. So that's another potential challenge. I think that for him, he's had a lot of difficulty figuring out what he can and can't eat. A lot of his life revolves around whether he's going to have a good, physical day or not. And a lot of factors, though, in a natal chart that can speak to those types of issues. Sixth house challenges, first house and second house challenges, the moon being in a difficult space, Mars in its exile making a difficult aspect to the moon. Virgo challenges sometimes can be associated with digestion. Taurus things, because it's what we bring into our body, what we bring into the mouth and consume sometimes. So you can also look towards North Node, South Node challenges. Speaking of my poor father, he has a South Node on his ascendant. So Mars in Taurus can join the South Node on his ascendant with opposite the moon in Scorpio. That's a recipe for like a lot of different physical things. He takes it in stride, though. I think a lot of his physical challenges have led him to cultivate a spiritual perspective, an emotional perspective on life, a detached perspective. I think that's really something that I think he passed on, or at least attempted to pass on to me and my family. I'm not sure I always am able to manifest it, but I'm learning. As a North Node conjoining the ascendant, there is some difficult things to try to balance between that. But yeah, a lot of good explorations for utilizing the astrology in that way. Javier says, LOL, unique, that face. Yeah, it's a funny one, huh? Devin says, Mars and Gemini, leaf cutter bee. Oh, I like that. That's a good one, Devin. Yeah, being able to take little pieces of something back to the nest, right? Javier says, what's the brand name of the headphones? Oh, and hope you're doing well. Javier, the ones that I ordered are called Loop 2s. They were just one that I saw that were recommended by a sort of an ADHD expert to reduce distractions and noise. I'm not sponsored by them. I haven't tried them yet. They're coming in the mail tomorrow. Right as Mars, the day before Mars moves into Gemini, those headphones are coming. Thank goodness. I live at a crossroad. I live at a stoplight. So there's a lot of noise that comes through. And when the weather's been, actually in my area of Michigan, the weather has been really climate, really cool. And so we've been having our windows open more than we would normally have during this time in the summer if it was super hot. And there's a lot more noise that's been filtering in. And there's been, some challenges around different areas around our house too, with different noise issues. And a lot of times what I'm learning or trying to learn isn't, and this is, I think, another true for distractions. How do we take back control when it comes to the things that annoy us, that frustrate us? Let's say that there's noise going on around us, and it's noise that we can't control. I can't pick my house up and move it to somewhere that's not near a busy intersection. I also can't necessarily control every single action that my neighbors or that the city is doing construction-wise. I can't control those things. And if I get angry at all of them, which I have in the past, friends, anything that, as a Taurus moon, I think one of the things that can make a Taurus type, a really strong Taurus type, upset is when their inner peace is disturbed, or their bodies are uncomfortable, or their senses are being assaulted. And I would find myself getting more and more angry over time when that was happening. My fuse was long, but when it snapped, it was ugly. And as I've gotten older and said, I can't keep doing this, these are things that are going to keep coming over and over and over again. There will be things that are outside of my sphere of sensory control that will keep happening. So what kind of things can I do to start coming back into my body to say, well, how can I control my experience of my environment rather than just everything in the environment? That's where something like noise canceling headphones, that's me saying, I can't control all the sounds outside, but I can control my personal experience of them. And that to me is very empowering. So I'm really looking forward to it. I will let you know if they're worth the whatever I paid for them, right? I think they're like, I got the ones that were like adjustable. They were like $50 or so after tax. But if it helps me have some peace of mind, they'll be worth every single penny. Ani says, I need these earbuds. Turn it down. That's why I get loud, is to drown out other people's noise. I need quiet, But if not, I'll settle for my own noise as concession. Yeah. How do we create our little bubble of quiet? And some of this might be really important as we move into this full moon, especially when the rhetoric starts to increase in like the news cycle. I have been trying to regulate my intake of news and information much more than I have in the past. Doesn't mean that I ignore the things that are going on around me. I do think it's important to stay informed. I do think it's important to stay up to date with current events, especially if it is helping us to be present and to help those that are being oppressed, or that are less empowered than we might be, in whatever form that might be, whether we have privilege in one area of life or the other, whether it's resources or through social demographics or something like that. We have to still pay attention of those things so that we can be present and do what we can do. But on the flip side of that, there's so much noise, especially through relationships with algorithmic news cycles, with the intent of political distraction. I think this current administration in America is one of the most intent on creating distractions that I have ever seen in my history on this planet. And it makes sense, right? You've got a Gemini, very Gemini focused administration, with a lot of people in that administration having heavy Gemini placements, maybe being masters of distractions. And that noise will probably get louder as Mars and Uranus are moving into that sign, and then activating those people's ability to create distractions. So how do we turn the noise on that? By filtering out, maybe engaging once a day with the news rather than completely scrolling every single hour of the day. The tech companies are designing the things that we engage with to keep us on them perpetually. How do we start to turn down that noise? How do we start to take back control of our attention? All of these are going to be questions that we ask ourselves moving forward into this next few weeks. Ani says, oh my God, that's a recipe for serious GAI issues. So sorry to hear that, but a good case study. Yeah, I think Ani's referring to my dad's, like, Mars and Taurus conjoined in the South Node on the ascendant, opposite Scorpio moon. Poor father. He takes it in stride, though. He's got a Pisces sun, and he's always really pretty positive about life. And I think that there's some things to be said about that, you know? Ani says, loop, I'm getting some ASAP. There you go. So let me know what your experience is. We'll compare notes on it. Okay. Devin says, leafcutter bee is early in the spring and cuts the leaves to push the flowers to bloom. Ooh, interesting. I like that. The concept of deadheading, right? Like, I think that's another thing that a kind of interesting concept we could apply to Mars and Gemini. I have lance leaf coreopsis in my yard. They are a native yellow flower that blooms fairly early in the summer and in the late spring. And one of the ways to keep them continuously blooming is to, when the first flowers come out, you snip them off, and you'll have more that will come afterwards. So Mars and Gemini, how do we deadhead, I guess, the metaphorical flowers in our life? If we have had something that has bloomed and we need to cut it out, like, and to be able to have more productivity, I think that could be important. Maybe there's some distraction that we have to eliminate to become more productive, to blossom, as Devin is insinuating here. I think that that's really powerful too. I think I've been really examining the way I become distracted by things. This last week, the distractions were sports. The sports has always been like my chosen dopamine distraction in a lot of ways. And recently, this past week, the team that I follow, the Milwaukee Bucks, traded their generational top 5 overall player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, to the Miami Heat. And it got me re-engaging with discovery, with the distraction of basketball. I had kind of checked out for a number of years because the vibes weren't good for the Bucks for a number of years. The inevitable decay that can happen with some mismanagement, but also the inevitable divorce that sometimes happens between players and franchises when it's time to move on. Everyone has an expiration date, and sometimes those divorces can be messy. And to preserve my sensitivity, I kind of checked out from basketball a little bit for a couple years as the dysfunction was growing. And by re-engaging with it, I was like, wow, this is interesting. This is a new distraction. I'm enjoying the distraction, but it's different than the things that are distracting me now. Like it made me realize that the distractions like of our phone, of like just random games on our phone, of like random social media things, are much more insidious and unfulfilling than even the distractions of thinking about your favorite sports team. You know, like I at least enjoyed that back in the day before I was completely glued to the algorithms of like these distraction devices. And it's making me realize how increased the noise has been, how more insidious the ability to try to grab our attention has become. And it's made me, I think over this course of this next weekend, while Mars is moving into Gemini, I think it's going to be stimulating a lot of explorations about how to eliminate distractions in my own life so that I can achieve more of my goals, so I can achieve more of my studies. I have a library, a house full of books that need to be read. I'm reading them, but much slower than I would like. I have things I want to do in my yard. I have things I want to do with my house to repair. I have things I want to do socially, things that I want to contribute to my community. And how do we eliminate those things that are coming up that are specifically designed to keep us continually scrolling, continually being afraid, continually being overwhelmed and too tired to get back against the exploitive kleptocracy? I guess I don't know what other word to say with it. I mean, there are certain things that I know I can affect and certain things that I'm having to like try to be Zen about. And we have to know the difference between those things. That's the serenity prayer. Like this week, they rolled back a lot of environmental protections. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, where they're rolling back protections on like, one example was land where whooping cranes were nesting and migrating to. And they're rolling back protections on communities where there are literally, I guess, only 500 whooping cranes left in an area of Texas or something like that. And they're rolling back the protections on those areas. That's the kind of thing that when I see that, I'm like, that makes me want to fight. Like that makes me want to get up off of whatever distraction I'm in and say, no, fuck that. Like that's something that gets me moving. We all have different things that get us to that point and get us to the movement point. And whatever that is to you, maybe it is a human rights violation. Maybe it is a nature environmental protection that gets rolled back. Maybe it's wealth inequality. Maybe it's voting rights. All of these things are interconnected, and we each have I think, a unique role to play to potentially restore some balance back to our world and our communities and our relationships with not only each other, but with this planet. So what is it that gets you up off the distraction wheel, up off the hamster wheel, and starting to actually go and say, how do I make my world a better place? You know, how do I make my world a more balanced, a more harmonious, a more peaceful place? And the answer is going to be different for each individual. Mara says, I have a hot flash every time I watch the news. Yoga meditation, 20 minutes a day really calms the nerves. Yeah, there's a lot of great ways to calm that nervous system down. You know, my version of meditation is a long walk in the woods. And I feel like I'm in a meditative state when I'm doing that. I also like to journal. So for me, I like to get the things that are bouncing around in my head out of my head and onto an externalized place, onto a page. And when I'm journaling, it's not always positive. Sometimes I like to call it brain dump. I'm dumping all the negative, repetitive things out on the page so that I'm not holding on to it. I'm kind of offloading it in a way that is potentially less destructive than offloading it in a way that could hurt other people. In my journal, no one's reading that journal but me, or someone who finds them after I'm long gone. And hopefully it doesn't hurt their feelings, but if they're watching this in the future, if I say something negative. It's just me trying to process those feelings and emotions so that I don't hurt the people that I love or care about. And I think that equally balanced, I talk about the things I'm grateful for in that journal too, so that I can say, well, I might feel negatively about this, but I'm grateful for this. It helps me to do my own personal turnaround every single morning. So those are some really great ways to think about. Devin says, exactly. We're not always releasing and bringing in new. We're also maintaining and reshaping and refreshing. Yeah, 100%. I think this is something that we don't quite understand as a Western civilization. And as somebody who has tried to live more in alignment with natural cycles, you really have to understand that perpetual growth is unhealthy. Growing and growing and growing and growing without release, without decay, without returning some of the plants, animals, ideas, ambition back to the earth, it's unhealthy. Exponential growth is what's gotten us to the brink of extinction. Isn't that funny? To me, this is a Taoist, can be explained through Taoist wisdom. When we go to an extreme of anything, we are planting the seed of its opposite. When we go to the extremes of growth, what we're planting is the seed of death, right? The seed of decay. When we try to perpetually grow and do it in a way that is excessive, what we're doing is we're inviting collapse of the entire system itself. Similarly, when we are on the brink of extinction, when we're on the brink of facing that death, sometimes we can plant the seed of new life. When we're facing our deaths, we can start to appreciate the life that we see around us. That was what was so beautiful about my experience this week at the Botanical Gardens. It was just experiencing the height of life, the height of Cancer season, right? The height of the summer solstice. Everything was alive around me. There was life in every square inch that we visited. And we didn't even have to go that far. Every step we took, there was some new wonder. And to me, that's a very different experience of the world than when I was 20, 25, when I thought that I had to visit every corner of the world to find wonder, to find novelty, rather than seeing that I can find it in every single step that I take, in every square inch that I take the time and the patience to examine. So these are other things that we can figure out when we're doing exploration into this upcoming astrology. Mayor says, I'm rereading Braiding Sweetgrass. I found it from you talking about it. Thank you. Oh, Mayor, I love that. I need to reread that one too. I think it should be a yearly endeavor, really. Much like maybe how people read Lord of the Rings. I'm knee deep in the Silmarillion right now. So I've been really reading a lot of Tolkien. I've been reading the myths associated with Tolkien and the mythology behind it. We had a long discussion about the story of Kullervo. I believe Kullervo is the Finnish epic that inspired a lot of the Silmarillion stories. And we were talking about Sigmund and Sigurd and the relationship they had and the battles they had with dragons. So I've been doing a lot of that type of research lately, but Braiding Sweetgrass is an amazing book by a woman named Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who is an indigenous biologist. Okay, so that's really cool that she's been marrying those two different ways of thinking and relationships to the world. She has a very scientific mind, but she also has the spiritual component that came from her ancestry. And that combination is really powerful, especially for Western minds. The ability to see how the rational parts of ourself, the scientific mind, is matching up with the traditional elder wisdom that comes through indigenous traditions. And that book really set me off on a real journey with native pollinator habitat restoration and being able to see things differently in a relationship to life rather than seeing myself as separate from it. And I think everybody should read it. I really do. So Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall-Kimmerer. Also, The Serviceberry is a good one. I would read Braiding Sweetgrass first. I have another one by her called Gathering Moss that I have not had time to engage with yet. I would like to read that. I'm staring at my shelf with books like this. Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkaporta was one that I read before Braiding Sweetgrass, and that came to me from Devin Malone. It suggested that one, which is an Australian version, basically, of Braiding Sweetgrass. And then another one I'd like to engage with is called Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. There's ones that talk about mycelium as well. Mycelium running. Paul Stamets might be another one to engage with. Just got a lot of books like this I want to read. So many books. But yes, tell me more about your insights with braiding sweetgrass, Mare, because that's the type of, I think, wisdom that we need out in the world right now. Devin says gathering moss is great. Good. I'd want to sit down and engage with that. I really love her writing style. She's just an incredible writer. It's equally as poetic as it is informative and enlightening. So you've got a real poet that is writing, a real amazing storyteller who also has a lot of scientific knowledge and ancestral wisdom, and that combination is can't be beat. Okay. Let's see. Ani says braiding sweetgrass book club. Curious about sacred economics. You know, Ani, we did a braiding sweetgrass book club like a couple seasons ago. I only had 2 people sign up for it. I did a book club with braiding sweetgrass. I had 2 wonderful people that signed up for it, and we went through it, and it was amazing. Maybe we should do it again if there's more interest, if it's becoming more popular. I would be open to that. I think it's an incredible book. Sacred economics. If I'm going to be 100% full disclosure, I was not able to finish sacred economics yet because I had to push the pause button while I was engaging with the Lord of the Rings and with the Silmarillion. So those book clubs sort of pushed the pause button on finishing sacred economics, which is crazy because I got through all the difficult parts of sacred economics and I stopped when they were about to give the turnaround with the solutions. So re-engaging with that, maybe that'll be a Mercury retrograde type of experience. But what I'm trying to do, Ani, is I'm trying to think about what types of offerings I would like to do moving into the fall for classes and things like that. That's one of my goals for this full moon cycle. The next 2 weeks is starting to really think about what types of offerings I want to make for this community. And if you have ideas, let me know. If there's more things that people are interested in, I'm open-minded to it. But those are things I'm going to be thinking about, whether it's doing more nature-related things, whether it's doing more mythologically related things, whether it's more of the sacred economics type of things. I want to do all of it. Like that's the Mars and Gemini talking from the future. I want to do all of these things, but we might have to figure out which ones are able to be supported and have a strong foundation, and which ones might need to wait. Devin says Robin's voice is medicine. I agree 100%. Ani says I must have been in another zone at that time. Potentially. Maybe the time will rewrite into the future. But yes, Braiding Sweetgrass, awesome book. Highly recommend. Okay, let's keep looking at this full moon. What do you say? We've got a few more details. So we've gone through all of the different features of it. Full moon conjunct Fasces. Mercury stationing retrograde that day. Jupiter co-present with the sun. The moon will be squaring Saturn and Neptune. Moon will be out of bounds. And then we have Mars applying to Uranus, moving into Gemini. Now, let's talk about the sun in Cancer 1. We're going to start with the sun in Cancer 1 for a specific reason. We start with the sun in Cancer 1 because the sun is providing this conscious intent, this spotlight that the moon is absorbing and trying to manifest into physical reality. When we have a full moon, we have tension between that. All right, we have tension points at the first quarter moon where we might have the challenge of needing to increase the qualities that the moon is moving through. Like in this last lunar cycle, we had to increase Libran qualities to be able to achieve the Cancerian goal. So we had to think about partnerships. We had to think about compromises. Here we have to think about the tension between, doing things in a way that might be forward, sideways, backwards, thinking about what we love, thinking about our sensitivity, and dealing with the tension of the Capricorn moon energy of like having to make tough decisions, having to sometimes let go of certain options, right? That's not always fun. Like we have to weed the garden sometimes too. I'm learning this too as a native pollinator habitat gardener is even when I have a successful native that I've planted, Some natives are much more aggressive than others. I even have sweetgrass in my yard, friends. My partner planted sweetgrass a few seasons ago for magical purposes, and it's gotten really out of control. I've had to remove a lot of it to plant some other things to create some balance. So even when we're successful with things, sometimes we have to weed things out. I weeded out a patch of sweetgrass and I planted shrubby cinquefoil, five-finger grass, which also has magical wealth holding abilities, but it's also a beautiful native shrub in my area that has these beautiful little tiny leaves that are fivefold, I guess you could say, where it gets its name, and these beautiful yellow flowers. It's really a gorgeous little shrub, but I had to remove something to put it in. So there might be something in our lives that we have to remove to put new things in. Now the sun here in Cancer 1 is going to be conjoining a fixed star called Alhina. Alhina is the proudly marching one at about 8 to 9 degrees of Cancer. It's not listed on my deck and flashcard. We have Mirzim, the announcer, I believe, here. But Alhina is a little bit closer. So Alhina is in the constellation of Gemini. It is the heel of one of the twins that is touching the earth. And the gods were, they sustained a wound. The immortals sustained a little bit of a wound if they touched into physical reality. So Bernadette Brady has a lot of literature on this that's really informative. And she talks about marching for something that you believe in, like being able to join some kind of movement, purpose, but it might be slightly painful to do so. We might have to get ourselves a little bit dirty in the process, right? We might take the idealized version of something and we have to sully it in physical reality. Oftentimes when we have ideals, the execution of those ideals can be a little bit painful. It doesn't always match exactly what we had envisioned. Sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes there are unintended consequences. Those could be parts of this too, but this decan in general is called the Lord of Love. It's a Venus-ruled decan in a moon-ruled sign. So we're identifying things that we want to grow into fruition. We had those Gemini decans where we were exploring, where we were having to make a choice as to which twin we wanted to allow to be on Olympus this season, which is interesting because when you have the exchange of Castor and Pollux and Olympus and Hades, what you realize when you're making a Gemini type decision is that that doesn't mean that the one we're eliminating into Hades is necessarily gone forever. There is a exchange. One is going to live on Hades for one season, and maybe the next season the other thing will live. Just because we can't do everything that we wanted in Gemini season doesn't mean that every single option that we eliminated is gone forever. And that can help relieve some of the anxiety of making the choice. So by the sun in Cancer 1, we've said we can do these things. These other things may be put to the side for this season. And now how do we nurture them into fullest fruition? And we feel that passion, that love for the thing that we chose that causes us to protect it. Okay. A lot of maternal protection comes from deep love. That's where most of it comes from. That's the essence of maternal protection. That's the essence of motherly love, right? Is that type of protective influence. So we are all kind of starting to understand what in our lives is most important to us. What do we love? What do we want to protect? What are we willing to be the mother bear for, too, I think is another question that we could ask ourselves. Devin says, yeah, Robin mentions that sweetgrass will come itself without human relations. Yeah, and she also mentions in that book, Devin, is that sweetgrass benefits from human interaction, right? By actually pulling out some of it, it does better than if we were just to like leave it alone and say, it's just there and we're not going to interfere with it. And I think that one of the things she says that really resonated with me is that we're part of these ecosystems. We have an effect. We can have a benefit for it rather than just taking the sterile view of it where we say, we don't interfere in that. That's impossible. We are part of it. We're going to interfere with it one way or the other. And what we have to ask ourselves, though, is our role in the natural cycle one that's going to be completely destructive, or is it going to be the one that lives in harmony with it rather than completely destroying it, or thinking that we own it, or thinking that we can just completely exploit it only for our own needs, rather than seeing ourselves as a steward of some of those things, where we consider the sanctity of other forms of life rather than just our own selfish desires, where we see the trees, the animals, the insects as part of an interconnected cycle and system, ecosystem, where if we are taking care of each other, everyone is able to live and benefit. That's the other thing that book really is hammering home, is if you collapse one part of the system starts to collapse, right? So this is something that a lot of ecological management has started to understand, is like when we eliminate, like, for example, if there is a predator in an area, like, I don't know, coyotes or mountain lions or something like that. If you eliminate the predator completely, the other parts of the ecosystem, the deer, for example, get so prevalent that they start destroying the vegetation. And then they don't have anything to eat, and then they die. So the predator is actually keeping the prey species in check so that there is enough energy, food to support everyone. Do you see what I'm saying? So sometimes we think when we want to eliminate something completely that we see as negative, we're actually just disrupting the interconnections between all of it. So yeah, it's a great book, though, and a lot of interesting things to think about. Choke itself without human relations. Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, okay, good. So you were saying what I was trying to say. It was just a typo. So Devin says, yes, Robin mentions that sweetgrass will choke itself without human relations. And that's really what we were talking about with not trying to just eliminate a predator in an ecosystem. You know, we have to interact with things. We have roles to play as stewards of this beautiful planet. Yeah. Okay. So Cancer 1 on Elhina, we might be called to something. And if you read a book like Braiding Sweetgrass, you might feel called to, like, take care of this beautiful, beautiful earth that we inhabit. Because guess what, friends? The world is a better place with you in it. And that's what Braiding Sweetgrass likes to say, is the sweetgrass is better off with human beings relating to it. You know, this earth can be better off if we stop trying to exploit it and start trying to become in a loving, nurturing relationship of equality with it, rather than in a toxic relationship of domination. All right, let's keep going. So the moon is going to be the host of this solar part. So we've got this sun-moon relationship where the host is not in the greatest condition for the sun. So our ability to create mutually beneficial relationships, which Cancer 1 loves to do, is going to be fed potentially rocky, mountainous, winter-like resources, where we might have to make choices and make changes to carry out the goals of Cancer 1 Sun. So we'll talk about change in a minute here, okay? Devin says, we're also stewards of the planetary energies. How will you choose to steward Mars and Gemini when you can? Agree, right? How do you filter out the negative distraction? How do you use your words in ways that will uplift rather than to hurt people? If you need to sever something and utilize the conditions of Gemini, how do we sever out the distractions? How do we sever out the disillusion, or what is the word I'm looking for? How do we filter out and eliminate the ability to make the things that we're going towards less effective by diverting our energy in multiple directions? This is where if we utilize Mars well, we can say, hey, maybe we've got some great ideas to eliminate the distribution of our attention in ways that aren't productive, right? Okay. Excuse me. Let's talk about the moon in Capricorn 1. All right, moon at 8 degrees of Capricorn, opposite the sun, and it is going to be conjoining Fasces. So moon in Capricorn 1 conjoining the fixed star Fasces. Now remember, Fasces, we talked about at the very beginning of the broadcast, is a fixed star in the constellation of Sagittarius. It is the eye of the archer. Bernadette Brady talks a lot about intensity, about focus, about vision, but gives a warning about ruthlessness. I think that this is one of the things that I'm thinking long and hard about with this full moon, is how do I pursue the goals that I have without getting so ruthlessly focused that it becomes a blind spot. Now, Fasces is actually in a nebula, and nebulas were associated with blindness in traditional fixed star lore. So how do we not become blinded by our focus, by the singularity of our focus? How do we work with others in ways that can be productive? You can see here in the Two of Pentacles associated with the Capricorn 1 decan, the lemniscat, which is a figure 8 configuration that represents the changing direction of the sun. Now, we just had the change of direction of the sun where it came to its peak, and now it is starting to descend in the length of day in the northern hemisphere. When the sun is in Capricorn 1, we see the winter solstice, and we see the change of direction to the return of the light. So we may be juggling different options. We may be seeing some reversals around this full moon where we have to embrace material change. This is called the Lord of Harmonious Change in Book T. Book of Thoth just calls it the Lord of Change. So this decan, to me, is, first of all, associated with Asclepius. Okay, Asclepius is the daimon, the 36 heirs of the zodiac, fragmentary Hellenistic text daimon or spirit of this decan. So we're trying to heal something potentially. Asclepius was a great healer. We may also need to understand the genius loci of a place, that is the spirit of a place. We may need to be making decisions about where we want to build. I'm thinking about this right now. Like, just a very practical example of this is I have about 3 different spaces in my backyard where I want to take out the concrete and put either native plants or raised bed gardens or gardens of some sort, plants. I want to restore the habitat. And as I was going through the botanical gardens, I was like, maybe we should get rid of the concrete where around the drain. We have a drain that is just dug into the ground with like a manhole cover, the grate. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to have a little rain garden? Maybe we could eliminate some of the asphalt and plant some swamp plants there, some rain garden plants. And it's like, oh, well, we might not be able to have the resources to do that and eliminate the asphalt from another spot that we wanted to plant that gets good sun. So these are the types of questions that are very mundane, but you might be asking something like this in your own life of like, which area do I want to cultivate? Which place is going to lead to the best possible outcome for the time and resources that I have in this moment? What are the laws and rules of this land? So taking my example, I have one space that gets really good sun, and that could be a space to grow vegetables. The space that I just referred to that gets a lot of rain water that flows downhill into this drain, it will be great for a rain garden, but it doesn't get as much sun. I'm not going to be growing food in the rain garden as much as I would in this other space. So the laws of that space are different. One is much lower. One has a lot less light. One could be a parking space. The other doesn't necessarily have people parking in it. These are all the things that we're weighing, like we're weighing in the lemniscate of where do we want to put the roots down? Where do we want to start a material process? That is what the moon in Capricorn is trying to manifest. Where do we begin the solidification of our dream, of our passion? Now, Saturn rules the moon in Capricorn, and Saturn was said to be a castrator. Kronos in mythology castrates his father Uranos, and of course, as testicles fall into the sea, and from the sea foam was created both Aphrodite and the Furies from the blood. So when we're talking about castration, Liz Green talks about this in her many wonderful books about astrology. We're castrating possibilities into material form. We're eliminating some of the possibilities to say, this is the one that we're going to make real. So when you're dealing with Capricorn I, there is a castration type of energy that comes through this, where we're castrating the things that can't possibly be manifested and saying, no, we're going to eliminate choices, and these are the ones that we're going to make real and that we're going to put our energy into. Okay. Mare says, I'm exploring the Lakota teachings of the sacred circle of stars. It's fascinating. I'm listening to YouTube videos by Kaylin K. Castell. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. I really enjoy studying indigenous wisdom and just appreciating that. So the more sources of that I'd be really interested in seeing. I know that there's actually some fixed star books that utilize the indigenous perspective on it as well, which is difficult because we a lot of times people tend to clump together different tribes and different indigenous cultures together. There were actually a lot of just different separate ways of viewing the world, and they had their own stories and their own myths. So when we see things from a Cherokee perspective, it may be very different from an Ojibwe perspective or something like that. So you have to be careful about clumping it all together. But the Lakota, another really rich tradition, right? And being able to see these star stories and see which connections we can make with the different cultures, and even within just the different cultures of North America is really powerful. So thank you for sharing that, Mary. I appreciate it. Okay. So let's talk about the host of the moon. First of all, the moon's in exile. So the moon wants fertility. It wants to beget many, many forms, right? When the moon's in Capricorn, we might not be able to beget every form. We might have to choose something and be very disciplined about what we bring into form. Its host is in Aries, second decan of Aries. Saturn is at 14 degrees of Aries, conjoining a fixed star called Alpheretz. Alpheretz is a fixed star in the constellation of Andromeda, and it is related to Bernadette Brady says there's some damsel in distress energy, there is fight or flight energy, there is speed associated with it. But think about Saturn as a planet, and then think about, do the words speed, damsel in distress, do we normally associate those things with Saturn? It's an awkward match. Saturn generally slows things down. Saturn is often associated with the senex, right? The old man, or the old wise person. So this is an awkward combination when we've got a young damsel, a fight or flight response, but then we're trying to slow things down and put it into context of wisdom. The other interesting thing about the host of this full moon is that Saturn is slowing down to station retrograde by the end of July. Let me look at the date here. So Saturn will station retrograde on the 26th of July. So we've got Saturn slowing down to reverse direction. Saturn in this decan of Aries says you are binding to something. This is one of the things I love about Austin Coppock's 36 Faces. He talks about being bound to the condition of the decan. Sometimes there is a denial of the energy of the decan. So there are two ways that Saturn and Aries too can manifest. Sometimes we can find ourselves bound and in a world not of our own creation. Okay, something where we're in someone else's created world and it's very uncomfortable. And we have to maybe disentangle ourselves from someone else's created world so that we can start creating our own world based on our own values. We also may be forced to create our own world based on our own values. We might be forced to make a new start and say, this is what I believe in. When Saturn was in Aries 1, we might have forced to say, this is what I reject. This is not me. This is what I say. I'm severing from the collective. I don't agree with this part of it. Saturn in Aries 2 says, here's what I do believe. And here is what I'm willing to, here are the laws of this land, which is interesting. We've got two decans, Capricorn I and Aries 2, that I think talk about the law, right? The laws of our personal laws versus the laws of the land that we inhabit. So you may be thinking, how do my personal values align with the laws of the land that I inhabit, or the space of the project that I want to embody? For a lot of us right now, the laws of this land are not in alignment with our personal values. I just gave an example of this earlier in the broadcast. The administration rolling back environmental protections for other creatures in this beautiful land is not in alignment with my personal values. In fact, it is diametrically opposed to my personal values. My personal values are ones that are protective of natural spaces, that are responsible stewards, rather than seeing things as brothers and sisters, rather than seeing them as disembodied, soulless things to turn into money and or resource like that. This is one thing that Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about in her book. She's like, what if we stop thinking about and calling it the Department of Natural Resources and start calling it the Department of Natural Gifts? If we look at everything in nature as a gift rather than just a soulless resource, if we just think of it as an ensouled, cosmos, we would treat it very differently. So that's an example of the tension between my own personal values and the laws of the land that I inhabit right now. Same thing with the fight with AI and data centers. A lot of us do not believe that we need all this excessive computing power, which could be used for surveillance state types of things, at the expense of our clean water, at the expense of our farmable land, at the expense of peace and quiet. Like the noise of these things is astronomical and very disruptive for not only for humans, but for the wildlife in those areas as well. So that's another example of being at odds with the laws of the land versus our personal goals and laws. There may be something in your life, whether those examples resonate with you, or if it's something else where your personal creed, manifesto, whatever it might be, royal decree, is at odds with the laws of the land around you, with the conditions where you are trying to plant something. Here's another example. I really need to raise my profile, like on these, I guess on online spaces. More people need to see what I'm doing so that I can maybe hopefully get more clients, more whatever, more students. But I'm a little bit at odds with utilizing social media that is controlled by large corporate interests that continue to devalue humanity, devalue our human rights, to suck up our attention. That's where there's a disconnect between what I believe in, peace and quiet, and the need to perpetuate a business. It's not something I've been able to answer really at this point. So these are things that you might be asking yourself, is where do your values come into conflict with the laws of the land and the place that you're trying to build in? And how do you reconcile those things? That's what we'll talk about as we move forward. And maybe we'll get some advice on that from the I-Ching and from the animal symbol that we have here today, and just understanding how the story unfolds over time. Okay, let's check in with the chat here. Check in with the chat, and then we'll see how the astrology is going to unfold in the weeks ahead. Ani says, if we can have a Department of War, we can have a Department of Gifts. From your words, from your mouth to the words of whoever is in charge, please. Yes, exactly. That's a profound statement. And I am wholeheartedly in support of that. that is one of the most powerful stories in Braiding Sweetgrass, is seeing this earth and our mother Earth, as a generous giver, but also trying to understand that we need to evolve our relationship to our mother. This is something Charles Eisenstein talks about in Sacred Economics too, that I need to finish the last third of. Thinking about the earth as lover rather than just mother, rather than just taking like we take from our parents who don't really ask for anything in return. How do we think of the earth as someone that who we want to care for, right? That who gives to us, but we also give to them. How do we become a giver to the earth rather than a taker? That's huge. That's so huge. And it's something that people are not talking about enough in the centralized way of thinking at all. They're not thinking about that at all. They're thinking about, what can I get from the earth? What can I exploit? What can I extract? And when we think about what we can give back to it, it's a whole different perspective. And I think it's really important as the nodes move into Aquarius and Leo, is instead of saying, what can I receive from all of the things that I'm doing, is what do I have to give? And if we go back to indigenous wisdom, the most abundant person was the person who had the most to give, right? Who was the most generous was the most wealthy, not necessarily the one that had hoarded the most, you know? And I think that when we start thinking in those terms, we start restoring balance, for sure. And he says, agreed, Spencer, you need to market your presence. Maybe you can work grassroots on the ground in person in your community instead. That aligns with your values. Something I've been thinking about, Ani, and something I used to do a lot more pre-COVID. I think that the COVID situation really was challenging and was something that isolated a lot of us and took away a lot of those opportunities. And maybe we have enough distance from it at this point to start re-engaging in that way. I think there's just some healing that needs to take place mentally and emotionally. I think I'm getting to that point, but it took a little while. There was a lot of trauma that came through that. There was a lot of really difficult emotions and feelings. I lost my mom during that period of time, and that really had a huge effect on my perspective. And I know a lot of people lost people. My partner lost. She had her dad had 13 siblings, and a good number of them passed during COVID, and that had a huge effect on her and her mindset. So how do we balance out some of those feelings and with the need to ground ourselves in earth again, right? I don't have all the great answers for it, but I think those questions should start to be asked. Javier says, in our culture, we always take care of our parents in their elder years. Yes, exactly. And Javier is coming to us from Canada via Nicaragua. So a more South American perspective, right? And it's something that I think that is rooted in the indigenous cultures of South and Central America as well, right? Where we take care of each other. We, instead of treating a mother and like something that we use up and discard, that we drain of all their resources and just cast aside, no, we take care of our elders in their elder years. We give back to what we have received as a gift from them. And the same type of relationship needs to be had with the earth, you know, and seeing it as, even if we see it as a mother, how do we treat it as an elder that we need to care for? Absolutely. All right, so before I move forward, let's do a little stretch, and then we'll do a little bit of a speed run through the astrology of the next few weeks. Do me a huge favor, friends. Thank you so much, first of all, for being here today. Thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon with us at Spencer Michaud Astrology. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Remember, the world is a better place with you in it. I love this shirt. I found this at a thrift store. I'm not sure what it's from. It's from like a Boys and Girls Club or something. I don't know, something like that. But it's a good message to put out into the world. Like the video, subscribe, take a stretch break. If you do want to contribute to the channel, you can buy a super chat or go to buymeacoffee.com. Sign up for a reading. Sign up for the newsletter, please. Subscribe on wherever you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I guess, YouTube. Each one of those is problematic in its own way, but those are the channels that we have to work with right now. So we're doing our best. Go over to Third Coast Mojo too and support Tanya. Really pushing the newsletter too, friends, because the newsletter is divorced from some of the big tech companies as much as you can be. We're still using, you still have to use technology to send a newsletter out, but what having a newsletter does for independent creators is it says that our connection with our people that we're trying to serve, our communities, is not completely dependent on the algorithm of the big tech corporation. When you subscribe to an independent creator's newsletter, you're saying, I want to have a more personal relationship that is independent of that exploitative big company. And that's really powerful. And that can allow the creator to make better choices with their own ethics if the ethics of the big tech company start to diverge, which many of them have. Like there are things that, there are days when I'm like, I don't want to be on Meta or Instagram anymore. I don't believe in Mark Zuckerberg. I don't believe in his vision of the future. And sometimes I get irritated being a content creator for his business. And when you do the newsletter, you're hopefully divesting from some of that. Now, there are compromises that have to be made, and I understand that. So we're trying to figure out what is reality and what is idealism. I think as I've been someone who suffered for his idealism in my life quite a bit. Sometimes when the ideals don't match the reality, I just fall on the sword. So sign up for the newsletter, please. I think that's the long-winded way of saying that. Follow me on spencermichaud.com. Do follow me on social media, because I feel like if we are going to be participating in those streams, how do we put some good stuff into the world? Yesterday, I shared some of our trip from the botanical gardens, and maybe just to inspire people to appreciate the beauty that I saw through my eyes. And how do we utilize our platforms for that? That's why I talk about native pollinators on this channel. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I think when we ground sky wisdom with earth wisdom, it becomes so much more powerful than when it's just an abstraction in our minds. So go check us out over there. All right, so let's take you through how this is going to unfold. First thing to think about, Mercury stations retrograde on, and I'm going to bring the chart up here so you can see it. We've got a Mercury retrograde that's happening on the same day before the lunation happens. Okay, so we're going to be reviewing scarcity, surplus. We're going to be reviewing how we give to others, what we have to give. We're going to be reviewing where we might need to increase some of our material prosperity, or where we have enough that we can give. You might have more time than you have resources, so you have time to give. You might have more wisdom than you have time. So maybe you have something that you put into a material form that people can consume that is outside of you spending the time to connect one-on-one. There are all sorts of different ways to think about it. I kind of believe in the connecting time type of thing, but not everybody is time wealthy. So how do you become more efficient with that? Those are questions that you can ask when Mercury is stationing retrograde. Mercury is going to move under the beams on the 2nd of July, and then it is going to cazimi on the 12th at 16 degrees of Cancer, and then station direct on the 23rd. So that's our mercurial sonatic cycle that we're going to be dealing with. The next day, things start changing significantly. All right. So we have the day after this, like this is the 30th. Okay. We have Mars at the bending of the nodes. All right. And we have Jupiter moving into Leo. So here's Jupiter here, moving into Leo. Mars is in Gemini. The other thing to think about with Mars in Gemini is that I think, unless I'm missing something, I think it'll end the malefic enclosure of Mercury and of Venus. We've had both of those planets being enclosed by the malefic planets for quite some time. for a few weeks. The Venus has only been a few days. Venus is from the 25th to the 28th, but the Mercury one has been going on for a little bit of a longer period of time. So maybe that will be the movement that we need, where if we felt stuck in the last week or two, that could be the movement that we see, where the options start to open up. Okay. Now with Jupiter moving into Leo, we'll talk about that in a second, but let's talk about what's on the screen here. Mars at the bending of the nodes. Important for shifting away from increase and moving towards decrease. This is the peak of increase. This is Mars at the south bending, I believe. South bending. I could be mistaken. I always forget which is the north and which is the south. But what we're doing is we're seeing Mars at the peak of its square with the increase north node and starting to move towards the south node, K2. It's sort of like a full moon of increase. So you may, it's really important because I think that when it's conjoining Uranus in Gemini, that's just like so many ideas coming to us, right? It's an explosion of ideas where we have to start to become like the leaf cutters, bees that we were talking about, where we have to start taking things back to the hive, eliminating some of the distractions and doing something useful with the materials that we have. And we're going to start moving towards integration, moving towards releasing attachment to form, which is a South Node Virgo type of energy. Maybe also releasing, I think that this is a place of release with Mars squaring the nodes, Mars in Gemini. It's saying if you want to make something with your ideas, you can't pursue every single one of them. You got to eliminate the things that are pulling you away from completion. Mercury is a destabilizing influence, whereas Jupiter brings things together in order. That's a kind of a secret signification of Jupiter. It's not just expansion, it's ordering. It's bringing all the pieces together to achieve the goal. Think about the Sagittarius archer, right? Trying to like aim for the target, bringing all the elements together, the strength of the archer, the resistance of the bow, the speed of the arrow, all to get to the target. Same thing with Pisces, honestly. Pisces has this kind of Odyssean, like, because that movie's coming out pretty soon, right? Odysseus. I'm curious about it with Matt Damon. Matt Damon. I always think about that. What is that? Team America from. Sorry, this is just a funny memory. From the South Park guys, right? And Matt Damon's there, and I think Kim Jong-il is interacting with Matt Damon, and he goes, Matt Damon. This is a big thing. Sorry, I digress. Back to the serious things of Mars at the north bending of the nodes. We are trying to eliminate some of the distractions so that we can bring things into manifestation, hopefully. Okay. So be able to enclose spiritual intentions into a physical form, which is one of the Virgo intentions. So you could also be having a breakthrough with the Scorpio and the Aries area of your chart, because that is the host. Mars is the host. There could be a turning point, and those two topics in your life are always going to be connected via the host, Mars. Yeah, exactly. Ani says, America, fuck yeah. Yeah, that's the greatest song from that. Team America. That was a funny, those guys, they have their problematic things, but they have enormous stones. I guess that will be the most PC way I could say it. They are not afraid to speak truth to power and to make fun of people when it is warranted. And it takes a lot of courage, and they have it. And so their comedy oftentimes is very, very, I guess courageous is the word I will say. Sometimes it's not always kind, I guess. There is some cruelty involved in it. But there is also, yeah, everybody has two sides, and they are really interesting in the way that they have pursued their careers. Okay. Jupiter and Leo, let's talk about that. So here we have Jupiter here. And this is where we start to see the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto, right? We have this kind of basket formation that people have been talking about with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune all hanging out in this kind of sextile. And then Jupiter starts to activate that, right? Jupiter is moving into a trine with Neptune and a sextile with Uranus and an opposition with Pluto. And Jupiter and Pluto, or Jupiter opposition to Pluto with the first decan of Leo, we may feel the white hot spotlight, I guess you could say. That decan is called the spotlight in Austin Coverick's 36 Faces, and it is helping us to understand how to utilize our will and how to utilize visibility. The opposition with Pluto could make that visibility feel a little bit uncomfortable. The sextile with Uranus could be an unexpected attention that comes our way. And the trine with Neptune, it might be not what it seems to be at first. So if there is an increase in your visibility or there's some unexpected attention that comes your way, be careful about how you wield your platform. Think about whether the assertion of your own will is in service of the collective. This is something I've had to think about a lot with a North Node in Leo, South Node in Aquarius, and a Leo rising. How am I utilizing my ability to wield my spotlight, to wield attention in service of my community, in service of the collective? Have I succeeded at that in the past? Sometimes not. Sometimes I have fallen back on some self-centered tendencies. But for the most part, it's something I think about a lot. And how do we start to consider the ability to utilize our will, our creativity, our uniqueness in service of some kind of collective value, right? And I think that's going to be important with Jupiter moving through Leo. First aspect is going to also be happening on that July 1st day, where we see the moon is going to be opposing Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is going to be retrograding in Cancer 3. The moon is going to be moving through Capricorn 3. I think that there is a tension in our ability to take on the mantle of responsibility. I think that the moon in the last decan of Capricorn says, how are you going to take on the weight of Saturn? How are you going to take on the weight of being able to respond to that which comes to you? And there could be a lot of questions about what is your responsibility and what isn't. That's the kind of conversations I would expect with this type of opposition, is who is responsible for this and who has the resources to do this or not do this. Sun will move into Cancer 2 on the 1st as well. So a little bit of a shift in the energy with the sun from the first decan, which is more one-on-one relationships, to the second decan, which is Mercury ruled instead of Venus ruled, where we are communicating our love for each other. We're communicating our passions. We are also protecting that which we have chosen to infuse our love into. That's the walled garden decan. So we might be having celebrations with people. Like, this is a time in America where there's these celebrations and whatnot. Maybe we're trying to figure out how to protect the project that we decided to infuse our energy into when we move through Cancer 2. Mercury is going to move under the beams of the sun on the 2nd of July. And this is a time where Mercury, in its retrograde form, is becoming a psychopomp. And a psychopomp is a fancy word for a guide of souls to the dead, or the land of the dead, or the underworld. So we might be seeing a time period symbolically where we are having to release ideas, release thoughts, where we're having to renew mercurial significations in the heart of the sun, where our communications might break down a little bit, where we need to reestablish a new way of communicating. We may also be revisiting something from our past, or something arises from inside of us, okay, rather than an external idea coming to us. So to me, the Mercury retrograde cycle, when it goes under the beams of the sun, is revisiting our past, revisiting our own ideas to see if they will stand on their own 2 feet in the new cycle ahead. When you have a direct Mercury cazimi going under Mercury going under the beams, I think that oftentimes that cazimi is receiving external inspiration, an external idea. This is one where you're examining your own intuition, examining your past, thinking about where you've been and what comes through that, in my opinion. We have our Mars-Uranus conjunction on July 4th. We've talked a lot about that with the astrology of July. We did a kind of a deep dive on Mars-Uranus, so I don't want to spend too much time on it today, but really the gist of that is unexpected communications, potentially unexpected words being wielded violently. Mars likes to utilize the materials of the sign it's moving through. In this case, Gemini is ideas, words, distractions, unexpected distractions coming up. That decan of Gemini is related to feeling paralyzed. Okay, here's Gemini 1, the Eight of Swords. Paralysis by analysis. Maybe having so many ideas coming that we don't know which ones to pursue. Remember, we might have to try to pare things down with Mars and Gemini. I would say just be very careful about how you are communicating during this period of time and what communications you are taking in. Be careful about popping off in a way that could damage your relationships. Be careful about being on the receiving end of communications that could undermine your confidence, your nervous system, your peace of mind, your mental health. All of those things are something that could come about in this period of time. Be very, I will reiterate this warning because it's July 4th, and I've witnessed a lot of stupidity in the area that I live in around July 4th. I'm not a huge fan of civilian fireworks. I like a good city-sponsored fireworks show that is well-regulated, that is done professionally. I'm not a fan of my neighbors shooting off fireworks at all times of the day, holding giant bottle rockets in their hands and blowing their fingers off. This is the type of aspect that could make doing that type of thing very, very dangerous. Unexpected violence related to the limbs, right? Gemini rules the hands, the shoulders, the arms. If you are doing your own personal fireworks display in America or wherever you may be, just please exercise some caution because there may be hubris involved with it, with Uranus. Uranus is a planet that is trying to be godlike. You could be trying to make the most amazing fireworks display ever, and you could blow your hand off in the process. Again, I've witnessed, or your eyes. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different ways that things can go wrong when you are dealing with those types of things. Please exercise extra caution. And if you are around people who are doing these things, even if it's not you yourself, be very careful. Stay a safe distance away from those things. If you're at a fireworks display, make sure that you're a safe distance away from where they're lighting them off. If you are in your online spaces, be careful about engaging in conflicts with people. I think that things could easily unravel very quickly with a Mars-Uranus conjunction where people start wielding words as weapons and we have communications that can be very damaging to one another. So I think on the positive side, Mars-Uranus could be a flash of insight that could lead you to eliminating options that aren't serving you, that are just distractions that are stopping you from moving forward. This could be a really powerful insight in that regard as well. Ani says, verbal fights and fireworks can't be more literal on Independence Day. Yes, exactly. 100%. And the same is true, like let's say you get together with family members and you have a difference of opinion. A lot of times people get together for like barbecues or backyard barbecues in America. This is like a tradition. Honestly, it's one that I kind of enjoy. I like getting together with people and sharing food with people. But just be careful if you're having conversations with people that you wouldn't normally have. Be careful of how you communicate with people so that you don't get into a verbal battle with somebody. That's not the point of the day. The point of the day, really, take the, I don't know what the point of the day necessarily is. To me, Cancer season is about sharing our abundance with others and deepening emotional relationships. So whenever a celebration like that comes together, that's what I choose to see its meaning as, rather than some arbitrary celebration of a border that I don't necessarily always acknowledge or believe in. Like I'm a citizen of this planet, not just of this country. I love the people in my community and I would like to celebrate with them, but seeing it as separate from people in another country it's just not something that is in alignment with my ideals, for better or for worse, right? So I guess just be careful about how you communicate with people and how you wield pyrotechnics around this period of time. Mars sextiles Neptune and trines Pluto on the 4th to the 5th. So this is Mars starting to activate that basket formation that we were referring to. Okay. So here is the 4th and the 5th here. Now you've got Mars making that sextile to Neptune, making the trine to Pluto. I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about this particular configuration with the outer planets, but from everything that I've been hearing and from what I have observed in the past with outer planets, is it is a period that is pivotal for action collectively. I did watch a really informative reel from one of my favorite astrologers. His name is S.J. Anderson. S.J. is awesome. If you aren't following him and on wherever he does his thing, you should, because he's brilliant. But he was talking about like potential hopeful time in the collective for actions that could be taken. If you think about the elements that we're dealing with fire and air. We've got passion and intensity that has fuel. Now that could be for better or for worse, right? Passion and intensity that has fuel can lead to things like our January 6th insurrection. It can also lead to changes in our worlds that could be for the better and for the positive. It can lead to things like we saw in New York, like with the election, where we had kind of a sweep where people were starting to say, hey, I'm really tired of the establishment. I want something new. I want something that has the potential for collective benefit rather than just corporate interest. So those are the types of things that could be interesting, like an ideal meeting passion. And I think that's something that we're going to see, like Mars is going to be activating that around the 4th and the 5th as well. Like the ability to activate passion that is in service of an ideal. And your mileage may vary with that depending on what your ideals are. Okay. Ani says, I love SJ. He's in Eastern Europe somewhere. Yeah, he's an expat in Georgia, I believe, the country Georgia. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's somewhere in that area. And he's chosen to just live this like stripped down monastic life in an Eastern European country. And just like the wisdom that comes out from him is amazing. I had him on the show once, and at some point I would like to do it again because just a wise character. I met him at UAC, actually. That's how I met him. And he's just very pleasant in person too, like just real chill, really smart, and worth following. Mayor says, listen to SJ yesterday. The sacred hoop of stars speaks to a time of healing. There you go. Right? Some really hopeful things coming from SJ's interpretation with that too. And I appreciate that. I appreciate his ability to contextualize it in a way that could be hopeful rather than in a way that might be difficult. Okay, so that's the 4th and the 5th. Sun squares Saturn on the 6th. So some kind of testing between the Sun in Cancer 2 and Saturn in Aries 2. Remember, we've been talking about the ability to make a new start, to create a world of our own making. And when Saturn is in the overcoming square to the Sun, it feels like being pushed out of the nest. You know, we got the walled garden with the Sun there, where it would prefer to grow in the security of the nest. And Saturn is kind of just like forcing them out a little bit early. And that could feel painful, could be feel a little bit scary. There's a tension between wanting to do it now or needing to do it now and wanting to let something develop over time. I would tend to default on letting something develop over time. Just, this is your resident Cancer 2 sun speaking, but your situation may be different. You may need to just take the leap. I think that I may need to just take the leap. I think that's another thing to think about. We're all subject to these planetary movements, whether it's comfortable for us or not, right? You may really want to take the leap, but you may need to nurture it a little bit longer. It depends on what your planetary perspective is. The next day is my birthday, July 7th. Happy birthday to future me. Neptune stations retrograde at 4 degrees of Aries. Reviewing the glamorization of individuation, of separating from the collective to go our own way, of the rejection of values that we don't see as our own. Also, a review of the glamorization of dominion or colonization impulses. One thing we talked about quite a bit when we were talking about Neptune and Aries previously, when that was about to ingress, is I saw that there would be an increase in the glamorization of violence and the glamorization of trying to annex countries and space and territory. And there could be a backtracking of that. There could be like hey, what are we're reviewing whether we should be doing that. Of course we shouldn't be doing that, but the powers that be see it as a glamorized means to an end. I was also having a thought and conversation with my partner about Neptune and its relationship with anesthesia and with the drug of choice of a potential time period. And I wonder if there's research that's been done with the rise and fall of certain drugs during different Neptune periods. We've seen like a backlash recently on like the marijuana after almost like a universal, not universal, but an acceptance of it more in communities with Neptune and Pisces, one that leads to a feeling of peace, I guess you could say, or detachment. Whereas what is the drug of choice with Neptune and Aries? I feel like cocaine or stimulants or something like that, but maybe seeing the dangers of that when Neptune is in review. Okay. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Appreciate it. Okay. That leads us to the last quarter moon on that day as well, July the 7th. And this is where the moon is going to be making and activating the square between Saturn and the sun. Similar themes that I talked about with the sun squaring Saturn, feeling pressure to take action or to make royal decrees, but feeling a little bit exposed from behind our walled gardens, I think you could say. Maybe even needing to release our attachment to our own private worlds, to bring others in, I think, with the last quarter moon. When we have waning moons, to me, I think we need to release some of the tendencies of the decan that the moon is moving through to achieve the goal of the sun. If we want to build community, if we want to have the Three of Cups experience that we see in the second decan of Cancer, the three graces coming together, cheering each other on, maybe we need to release some of our individual selfish desires. Maybe we need to see things from someone else's perspective. And that this last quarter moon could be something that is baked into that lunation cycle. Jupiter moves onto the beams on the 8th. Okay. So this is Jupiter going into the heart of the sun, getting ready to be renewed in the cazimi of the sun in late July. So this is something where we might be releasing something Jupiterian. Maybe we're releasing some beliefs about visibility. That's interesting. I know that we've talked today about, Ani was saying, Spencer, you need to get yourself out there more. You need to advertise more. It's not super comfortable for a shy 12th house Cancer sun, such as myself. But maybe this will be a period where, to be able to move forward, we'll have to release belief systems around visibility. And not just for me, but for everybody. We might have to take on a new role. Okay, a new role of responsibility, a new role of visibility. Okay. Ani says, yeah, I predict stimulants also. Yeah, right. I think that's we were talking about Neptune in a fire sign, stimulants taking new rise in prominence. Be real careful with all that stuff too, friends. The stimulants you can really get you in trouble. Like I feel like marijuana is much less dangerous than some of the stimulant stuff that can mess you up real quickly. So just the public service announcement, because Neptune can lead to altered states of consciousness, but not always for the best either. It can lead to a breakdown of consciousness as well. Venus moves into Virgo on the 9th. So Venus moving into Virgo is a challenge for Venus's dignity. It is Venus moving into its fall. It is a place where Venus is in the domicile of Mercury, and a place where instead of being able to harmonize with ease, we are criticizing. This is the desire to separate things out into categories, where Venus wants to harmonize and merge those things together. So it's an awkward fit, right? We may have an ability, an enhanced ability, though, with Venus and Virgo to pay attention to the details and to harmonize those things. We may, towards the second decan, have a unique decanic ability to bring an idea into form. So those are things to consider with Venus and Virgo. Venus will also transit through Virgo, conjoining the South Node. So it's going through Virgo. It's going to conjoin the South Node at 0 degrees of Virgo, which is conjoining the fixed star Regulus. So this is an interesting one where Venus is heading into a relationship with the South Node that is a place of decrease. So maybe we have to decrease our attachment to form, to details, to power. Okay, this is another thing that Regulus can speak towards, is empowerment. Decrease our attachment to revenge. This is a part of the challenge of Regulus, is empowering ourselves at the expense of others by stepping on their heads. And, this is Bernadette Brady warns of this. Okay, so how do we release the tendency to want to dominate others? I think this is a interesting thing to talk about, humility. How can we embrace humility in our characters, where we realize that for us to become powerful, we don't need to make others less powerful. We can all just empower one another. All right, let's see. A few more things here. Javier says, I keep thinking meth, delusion central. Yeah, just another stimulant, right? Like where these things start to just take prominence. Neptune farms, exactly. Sun moves into the third decan of Cancer on July the 12th. That's when we're going to be seeing the Mercury Cazimi. So Mercury Cazimi is right as the sun moves into Cancer 3. So let's talk about the Mercury Cazimi a little bit while we contextualize Cancer 3. Again, I did longer deep dives of this in the Astrology of July. I'm just giving us a review, and with more context, with more lived experience. So now with this Mercury Cazimi is going to really highlight the movement of the sun into a new decan, Cancer 3, which we've talked about, related to surplus and scarcity. We may have an idea about where we have abundance in our life and how we want to share it, how we want to become philanthropists, whether we want to share our wealth of time, whether we want to share our wealth of wisdom, whether we want to share our wealth of resources with those less fortunate. We may also get some ideas of where we are experiencing lack or scarcity. Where do we not have enough time? Where do we not have enough resources? Where do we not have enough wisdom? And that can help lead to rebalancing. This Mercury Cazimi moment on the 12th of July could be really powerful for planting the seed for rebalancing and bringing into harmony lack versus excess. Venus will square Uranus the next day. Okay, so this is a moment when Mercury Cazimis, we have Venus conjoining the South Node, squaring Uranus. Unconventional ideas for doing so. And remember that Mercury Cazimi is hosting both Venus and Uranus. So we may have to work outside the box to create that balance. We may have to reduce our attachment to doing things a certain way and maybe embrace unconventional ways of achieving the goal. This is something I've had a long conversation with like my daughter in the past, is how do we release our attachment to doing things a certain way? This is good conversations for just reminding myself of this too. As a Virgo stellium, how do we get in touch with the essence of something versus the form? If we're trying to achieve a certain goal, how do we get open-minded about how it is achieved rather than getting so fixated on the method that we don't achieve it at all? I think that's a really important question to ask with Venus squaring Uranus in mercurial signs being hosted by a Mercury Cazimi when we're talking about scarcity versus surplus. That leads us to our last couple of things here, where we have a new moon in Cancer on the 14th. Okay, so once we go through the Mercury Cazimi, once we embrace the unconventional ideas and resources, then we plant the seed for achieving something with the 21-degree Cancer new moon on the 14th of July. Okay, and we'll have a whole breakdown of that as we move forward. That's where the moon is going to be well-resourced, really well-resourced, by the way. I think that's going to be cool because at this full moon, we may be trying to make decisions because we might feel like we are not as well-resourced with the moon and its exile. Once we get to this new moon, after we go through the Mercury Cazimi cycle, after we ask a lot of questions, eliminate some of the distractions, eliminate some of the things that are draining us mentally, emotionally, physically, we embrace unconditional ways of achieving our goals. That's when we feel like, okay, now it's time to press the go button around the 14th here and plant the seeds to becoming the fertile creators that we want to become. I think that's really powerful. I think that's going to be a pivotal moment in the month. And then we see that the final thing we have here is that period after that new moon, we have that basket formation perfecting a lot of its outer planet aspects. Uranus will sextile Neptune. Uranus will trine Pluto. All of these things are kind of coming together. So take this period of time between Monday, the 29th, and July the 18th or so, after the new moon, this end of this second half of this lunar cycle, to get clear about where you want to build, what resources you have, what resources you need, how you can utilize your specific abundance, whatever gifts that you have. How can you utilize those to uplift other people or the earth or protect the earth or be good stewards of wherever space that you are inhabiting, whether that is a physical space, an online space, or any other type of space? And then how can you align that with maybe something greater than yourself? I was watching the NBA draft this week, and I love drafts. I love seeing, and I know that there's some problematic things about sports drafts, and I acknowledge that. But what I love about them is seeing young people achieving their dream that they've worked hard for their entire life. I love the potential that I see and projecting out potential. I love thinking about where is someone at and what could they become. And the team that I follow, the Milwaukee Bucks, after trading their franchise superstar that changed the fortunes of their entire franchise, basically kept the team in the small market of Milwaukee. You want teams to root for. The Wisconsin teams are really, first of all, the Packers are publicly owned. They don't even have an owner, so there's a really communal energy to it. Both the Bucks and the Brewers are small market franchises that are trying to navigate a really unfair economic system with haves and have-nots. That's why I love these teams and are continuing to support them, because I'm in favor of rooting for the underdog. And I see a franchise legend, a guy like Giannis, an immigrant that came from Greece via Nigeria. So his family's from Nigeria. He was born in Greece. He grew up selling watches on the streets of Greece and came over as a skinny 18-year-old kid and grew in Sagittarian style into this Greek Greek god, the Greek freak, Zeus himself embodied. And seeing that, the rise and then some kind of the deterioration of that, and then being able to connect that with the hope of the next generation of players that came through draft picks that they received in this trade. There's something really beautiful about the cyclical nature of that. And one of the people that they drafted, his name's Braden Burries, and he's a Virgo. I always love the draft because I like looking up their charts. The Bucks drafted a version of Giannis, a new Sagittarius natement with Jupiter in Sagittarius. Jupiter ruled Sun in Sagittarius with Jupiter in Sagittarius. Braden Burries, Sun in Virgo with Mercury in Virgo. So I'm excited about both of their charts. But Braden Burries was talking about, they always interview these young gentlemen with their parents at the draft. And he was talking about, how do I become involved in something bigger than myself? And I felt like that was the South Node in Virgo speaking through him, with his Sun conjoining the South Node and saying, how can I become involved in something bigger than myself? You know, how can I utilize my skills in service of a team goal rather than just an individual goal? And I loved hearing that from a 20-year-old kid, you know, even if, you know, maybe that's not the goal that you have in mind, but just seeing anybody sacrifice their individual needs for the goal of a greater good, to me, is very inspiring. And how do we move forward with that within this context of the Uranus-Neptune sextile, trine Pluto, etc.? How do we do something with our skills and with ourselves and with the vehicle of our consciousness in service of something greater than ourselves? And I'll tell you what, it's going to feel real good. Feels real good, because if you only do something in service of yourself, it feels good for a little while potentially, but then it starts to feel hollow and empty because you don't have anyone to share that with. Okay, how do we learn to share our abundance with each other? Stellar Rendition said, I watched the draft too, and I love feeling their joy in the accomplishment too. I couldn't have said it any better. It's just so amazing to see the realization of a dream over and over and over again. They're always, each pick is the realization of someone's lifelong dream to that point. And that to me is really beautiful and inspiring. And I will never tire of that. You know, I think that that's really, really cool. Yeah, it was fun. All right, friends, let's do an animal and an I-Ching, and we'll wrap for the day. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Do me a huge favor before we do that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Please sign up for my newsletter. Please support my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews at Third Coast Mojo. Sign up for the newsletter. Visit me at spencermichaud.com. Sign up for a reading. Would love to work with you individually. One of the things that I love doing is breaking down a chart, not just in terms of me talking at you, but collaborating with you to be able to find practical solutions to cyclical issues that you're going through, and to make a plan for your life and say, how do we plan for the ups and downs? And sometimes part of the plan is knowing when to stop. It's not just knowing when to expand. Sometimes it's knowing when to release. And that's part of what I do in my work too, as a last quarter moon, is sometimes helping people to understand when they need to release something in their life. And then through that releasing, a new cycle of growth can come about, just like we saw with the transition from the Giannis era in Milwaukee to whatever the next era is to come. Okay, I have an animal. Let's do the I-Ching first. The I-Ching is number 11. Peace, changing to hexagram number 7, the army. So hexagram 11, and I'm going to quote Jack Balkin, as I am apt to do on this channel, my favorite I-Ching author. Hexagram 11 translates to peace, harmony, smoothly flowing, prosperity, harmonious interactions, things going well, advancement. The judgment says peace, the petty depart, the great arrive, good fortune and success. One thing I will drive you towards, if you want to understand the rise and fall of how success and the deterioration of success happens, before I dive into this, just brought up something in my mind. Petty departing. The Bucks won a championship in 2021 because everyone was on the same page and was working together. They started to deteriorate when everyone had self-interest. And over a period of about five years or so, everything became corrupted. And it just completely, the bottom fell out of it. And with this trade, it seems like there is hope again and a unification of purpose. And I love seeing that. It's made me excited about being a basketball fan again after kind of checking out because I couldn't handle the dysfunction that was coming out of that. So there might be peace coming in something that you care about deeply. Maybe you don't care about basketball, but maybe there's something in your life that you care about deeply where the petty are departing and the something great is arriving. This hexagram represents a time of great prosperity and concord. Heaven and earth operate together happily and effortlessly. The high act in harmony with the low, and the strong with the weak, the great with the small. Progressive forces make great strides. Worthy elements advance without obstacle. People of talent, ability, and wisdom obtain the respect due to them, and others work with them freely and happily without envy or rancor. Those who join in are honored and respected in turn for their contributions. Peace descends on the world, and everything flows smoothly and easily. It seems as if heaven were on earth. During this period, your relationships with others become more congenial. Old problems will be resolved. New intimacies will develop. Now, intimacy between individuals is a very Cancer 1 solar type of thing. Okay. Cooperation and coordination become easier and almost effortless. You can begin new projects with confidence, and the ones that you are currently pursuing will blossom. If you make an effort and devote yourself to achieving your goals now, you will flourish and prosper. Okay, so this is the energy of where we might be at now. And here's what it's changing with the changing lines. Okay, here's how things are moving. The first line says, when reeds of grass are pulled up, other roots of the same kind come with them. To set forth brings good fortune. The roots of the rush plant are intertwined, so that when one strand is pulled up, others come with it. This metaphor means that in times of peace and prosperity, an able person who goes out into the world to accomplish something naturally draws others along to the benefit of all. When prosperous and peaceful conditions are just beginning, it is particularly important for the people to cooperate with each other. Working together for the common good propels the good times forward and helps make them last. It is time to make a difference. Decide on a worthy goal and go out into the world to accomplish it. As the text says, to set forth brings good fortune. Your efforts will attract people with similar aims and values. If you work to benefit others in addition to yourself, you will meet with success. Okay, so aligning your goals with others that you agree with. Now, there's another changing line in the third place. It says, there is no plane without a slope. There is no going forth without a return. One who perseveres in times of hardship is without blame. Do not be worried about this truth. Enjoy the blessings you possess. The basic lesson of the Book of Changes. Remember, we called the first decan of Capricorn the Lord of Change. Here we have the Book of Changes. The basic lesson of the Book of Changes is that everything changes. Good times turn to bad. Bad times eventually improve. We just outlined this with the rise of, like, my favorite sports team to the pinnacle of success, and then the deterioration and decay, and then again the seed for hope being planted. You can see this metaphor play out in so many different ways. Okay, even during the most peaceful and prosperous conditions, difficulties decay and evils are merely held in check and are never completely eliminated. But one should not dwell on this obsessively. Negative thinking keeps you from enjoying the present. It may actually contribute to the hastening of decay, for if you think that things will go wrong, they probably will. Rather, the right attitude is to be realistic and to accept the laws of change. First, because good times will not last forever, you should not waste them, but make the most of them. Learn to live in the here and now. Take advantage of opportunities to grow while resources are available to you. Second, recognize that you cannot rely on external circumstances or the approval of others to make you happy, for these things inevitably fluctuate over time. If you are overly dependent on them, you will suffer greatly when fortune changes. The best way to deal with change is to develop your own inner resources. Strength of character and independence of spirit help you enjoy the good times and persevere through the bad times. Inner resolve and faith in your own abilities bring you the good fortune in the long run, no matter what happens in the short run. This is changing to the hexagram number 7, the army, which is discipline, self-discipline, honor, loyalty, integrity, massing of force, the multitude. The judgment says the army needs perseverance and a strong leader, good fortune, no blame. A mass of people is not an army, but it can become one if it is trained, organized, and led by a great general. Discipline is critical or crucial. It converts a disorganized mob into an effective fighting force. But discipline is not achieved through threats or violence. Rather, it requires leadership. Good generals know how to inspire their troops and create a sense of esprit de corps. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Forgive me if I didn't. They know how and when to exercise authority and punish disobedience, to encourage resourcefulness and reward ambition. They train their troops so thoroughly that discipline and obedience become second nature, and then organize and arrange them so that their force and effect is amplified and maximized. Great generals always show care and concern for the welfare of their soldiers. They understand the destructiveness of war and therefore risk the lives of their soldiers only when it is necessary to do so. They are bold when the situation requires it, but hold back when it is prudent. They use force sparingly and with precision. And because they are loyal and honorable to those who serve beneath them, their troops are willing to follow them into battle. Just as troops are loyal to good generals are loyal and trustworthy to their king and country. Hence, the rulers have complete confidence in their military leaders and give them the responsibility to conduct the war to its conclusion. The same consideration applies to all effective leadership. If we want to move away from the war metaphors, which a lot of the I-Ching is written in ancient China, and of course that they were working through the challenges of empire around that period of time. So the same considerations apply to all effective leadership. Any organization needs a strong leader who knows how to gain the trust of others and inspire them with a sense of vision and common purpose. You must be able to convey your sense of enthusiasm and commitment to others, and you must recognize the importance of planning, organization, and discipline. Exercise your authority fairly and consistently, and you will win the respect and obedience of others. Act loyally and honorably to others if you want them to act loyally and honorably to you. The army is also a metaphor for the conduct of your life. You are both the potential army and general who must train it and transform it from a disorganized mass of peasantry into a disciplined and motivated force. That statement is interesting to me. Mostly as a statement of how the working class generally fights the wars of the elites. So it makes me, there is a little bit of vomit that comes up with that statement. Like the general, you are entrusted with great possibilities, but like the undifferentiated mass, your ambitions will amount to nothing if you do not establish priorities and organize the structure of your life. If you want to succeed, you must have clear-cut goals and you must be enthusiastic about them. Otherwise, you will not have the courage to persevere and meet the opposition. Discipline yourself and your desires so that healthy and effective habits become second nature. Marshal your forces and abilities to put them to the best possible uses. All right, so if we try to figure out different metaphors for this so that we don't have to perpetuate the language of war and of class desperation, or I don't know. How do we create mental discipline to be able to organize our life? I think that's really the gist of this. We are in a place of peace. We're in the last days of Jupiter in Cancer, and we have to really organize the abundance that we have, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's wisdom, so that we can organize ourselves to be in service of our communities and the people that we want to serve, the people that we want to connect with our wisdom, the people that we want to connect with our services, whatever it might be. And to do so, sometimes we have to be disciplined. We have to take our disorganized mass of ideas and turn them into something practical and show up each day and do the work. And sometimes we have to be a little bit ruthless with ourselves to say, hey, I need to eliminate some of my bad habits, some of my lower tendencies, and start putting energy towards the things that are most important to myself and the people that I'm trying to serve. So I think in that regard, it's a really interesting hexagram. Ani says, I appreciate pointing out intimacy as a solar principle, sharing your soul, versus vulnerability as a lunar principle, sharing yourself. In Cancer 1, that resonates. Thanks, Ani. Yeah, I think that the sun, I've read, I think what I'm hearing is triggering a realization from Charles Eisenstein's book, Sacred Economics, where we talked about the solar generosity too, right? Where the sun was worshipped as a generous life giver in ancient civilizations. And we've talked in the past about how the sun can be about where do we have generosity to give to others. And when the sun's moving through the first decan of Cancer, we can generously create mutually beneficial relationships. We can generously create intimacy. Sometimes it just happens to us. Like this week, I had a really nice just walk in the woods at a botanical gardens with my partner, one-on-one. It wasn't the distraction of trying to make other people happy or like mask to like connect with new people and feel awkward and uncomfortable. It was just me and my partner appreciating the little things in that garden without being worried that someone was bored or that someone wanted to leave. Like it was really, really nice. I have to admit. And that might not be the case when we move into a different decan, but that was really embracing the moment of that particular solar moment. And that's the thing that we have to understand about astrology. How do we come into alignment with that particular solar moment? And in this solar moment, intimacy is really spotlighted. It's highlighted. It is where we have the ability to be generous with our time. All right, the animal I have for you today is the bat. I don't think we've gotten the bat on this channel before. Look at those little bats. That was the least horrifying picture I could find. They look strange. They're cute, right? They're a little like a flying mouse. Flitter mouse. Probably butchering some German. De Flitter. I'm not even going to try. Here is Melissa Alvarez talking about the bat. The bat is the only mammal that can fly. It sees the world through sound and is able to navigate the sky using sonar. It makes high-pitched calls as it flies, which bounce off the area around it, allowing bat to create pictures of its surroundings. Contrary to saying blind as a bat, all species of bats can see. Bats prefer to roost in groups. Some species prefer to have their own individual space, about 6 inches, within the group. Other species pile upon one another for added closeness, right? Emotional intimacy. These animals have talents for constructive changes, creativity, exceptional hearing, fearlessness, flexibility, great navigation, intelligence and intuition, meditation, navigation in the dark through the unknown. They are observant. They often represent having prophetic dreams, being open-minded, and seeing what others miss, being sensitive to vibrational energy and wisdom. They have challenges around being fearful without reason, maybe potentially loner nature, naivete, overly sensitive, or unaware. The bat appears when transformation is necessary. This can be a physical or inner transformation or a move to a new location or career. I mean, I always am amazed at the synchronicity between these. I choose these randomly, friends. So we're talking about location as a Capricorn III understanding of changes in a new thing, right? Changes in a new land, understanding what needs to change physically. So bat can be about inner transformation or the move to a new location or career. These changes are coming, and you need to prepare yourself to handle them on all levels. If you prefer solitude to crowds, you might find yourself participating in group events or vice versa. Bat encourages group interaction instead of a solitary life. Release any fears, doubts, or hesitations that are holding you back from being a participant instead of an observer, and step forward on a different path. Watch, listen, and think before you react. Maintain your keen sense of observation because it will be an integral part in your development and progress on new ventures. All change means progress, and how you handle it will make it a positive, exciting event or a negative one. That means that you should embrace positive qualities within yourself and look at the world from a different point of view. This animal can assist you when you are transitioning from one phase of your life to another, or experiencing major life changes or small changes in your day-to-day routines. It doesn't matter how big or small the change, Bat can help you during the transition. If you're working in your own spirituality, Bat can draw the information you need to you, help you understand it, and assist you in your spiritual change. If you've been avoiding facing the truth about a situation in your life, Bat can help you see it clearly. Bat can make you more aware and help you look at situations from a different point of view. Bat is helpful when you're trying to discover past lives. Use your intuitive sonar detection skills to find out what is really happening around you. And connect to your power through to regenerate or reinvent yourself. This is really important for, I think, the Mercury retrograde and Cazimi coming as well. Bat encourages you to let go of that which you do not need. Venus South Node, anyone? Once it is released, new opportunities will come your way, or Mars and Gemini. This is all part of the transformation process. Okay, so release things you don't need. Go through the transformation willingly. Utilize your intuition. Trust what you hear rather than what you see. Use your sonar, make little eeps and then get information when you're making an eep to see what comes back to you, right? Open your ears, see things from multiple angles. Bats are really cool animals. You see them at the transition periods from the daytime to the nighttime. So we might be going through a transition period where we can't necessarily see the way that we have seen in the past. And we have to trust our other types of senses to get us through it. And that crepuscular time, that dusky time of day is one where we're transitioning to something new. And it requires a little bit of a leap of faith. So there is some faith involved with this. So that, my friends, is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Friday afternoon or whenever you are experiencing this. It's going to be an interesting weekend and an interesting week moving forward. And we will continue to contextualize it. Again, if you are needing help, reach out for a reading. I love the little bat symbols there. I love it. If you need some magical help, reach out to Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. There's new things that continue to come out each week. There's a lot of product that is being released in the next few bits. So sign up for my newsletter and for Tanya's newsletter to know when new things are being released, or follow her on Instagram at Third Coast Mojo. And try to go through the changes gracefully. Recognize that there is always a cycle of increase and decrease. There's a cycle of climbing the mountain and coming down the other side. And that's natural. If you're going through releasing something, something I've learned from the sports world recently is oftentimes the time for something has just ended. And instead of making it a negative uncoupling, you can make it a conscious uncoupling, right? If something's time has come, you don't necessarily have to demonize what you had in the past. Sometimes you just have to accept it and then move forward. And then there's a lot less collateral damage that happens when you do it in that regard. So if there's changes that you're going through in your life, you don't necessarily have to make the previous version of yourself wrong. You don't have to make the person that is no longer right for you wrong. You can just go about with embracing the new, appreciate what you had for what it was, and then move forward into the next cycle. And I think that that's how we embrace these things with kindness to both ourselves and to others. And I think that's really important moving forward. Stellar Rendition says, using your heart sonar to send out unconditional love beeps and they echo back. I love that. I love it. Thanks for being here, friend. And thanks for your wisdom. Javier says, take care all. Nice to see you, Javier. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. Have a great weekend. Have a great week ahead. Try to regulate your nervous system, eliminate some distractions, get your little headphones if you need them. And we'll get this through this together. We'll see you the next time. Take care, friends. Peace.